Welcome back, everybody, to Quid Prog Quo, the musical podcast where I introduce my friends and loved ones to progressive rock music, and they in turn get me to listen to, well, whatever they want. And on today's YouTube episode, we're actually looking at a episode that has already been released. This is the episode with my very, very good friend Leah, who had me listen to Mondo Cozmo, and I had her listen to, I believe it was Karnataka, one of my favorite hidden gems in the progressive rock community. So I'm really excited for you to have a watch of this one because I realized that Zoom is able to record not just the audio, but as well as the visual as well. So that's what we're going to be getting. And as always, I want to give a huge thank you to the show's graphic designer, which is Olena Alinsky, as well as the show's main music that I use, which is Explosive Ear Candy and their song All Together Now. Now, you won't be able to see either of those. Well, I guess you'll be able to see the icon, but the actual song is only on the podcast. So be sure that you're checking that one out as well. I also have this lovely merch that I was able to get. Now, this is just a one-of-a-kind thing. I wanted to see kind of a proof of concept. But if that is something that people are interested in, let me know by commenting down below if it's something that you really want to check out. So without further ado, let's dive into this week's episode. So how's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Doing all right. Yeah,
I'm really excited.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited too. I mean, I've got a nice I find this is kind of the perfect day for music listening because it's a little bit on the dreary side. We've got some snow coming down, so it's perfect. It's perfect weather for listening to some good tunes.
That's funny because where I am, it's like really nice and warm out and it feels just like hopeful and exciting. Yeah, so I guess we're in opposite settings for listening to music, but I like this weather too. I like the dreary, vibes for listening to some like calming music, but I also like this kind of weather too for listening to like upbeat,
right.
hopeful. Yeah.
It's going to be interesting because I feel like the albums that we have chosen for one another will reflect the setting that we're at right now. Like I know the music, the album that I selected for you really matches the atmosphere that I'm in right now, but that's also where I was when I started. But I feel like we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit because I want to introduce you properly. I want to.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, I want people to know who
we
you.
Jumped right into it.
We did a little bit. I want people to know who you are. So, Leah, do you want to like introduce yourself and kind of who you are and how we know one another? Because
Sure.
I think with you, much like the 3 starter Pokemon, I have collected the trilogy of the people from Duffer 99. So who be you and yeah, how do you know me?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Leah, as you said. Michael, you and I worked together at Jeff and Clark at the library. How long ago was it now? I think 2 or 3 years at least.
I want to say 2.5 years.
2.5.
Yeah.
But what's funny is before both of us joined Vaughn, I did a placement at OLA while you were there. But we didn't meet though. But we must have crossed paths at the office because I came in a couple times.
Well, you must have. Yeah. When did you come in? Like when were you? Because it was the forced intern that you were, right?
No, I did like an internship while I was getting my master's at U of T.
Was that with
Mary?
And
I just was doing some research. I can't remember.
Yeah, I feel like because that's okay. I feel like that was with Mary. And you must have come in like maybe once or twice because I was kind of they said I was like the face. So we probably like ships in the night past one another, but never really like said hi or anything like that.
And then it happened again when you started at Bathurst Clark.
Yeah.
I think I was on my way out of Bathurst right as you were coming in, and we never properly met until Dufferin. But anyway, we worked together for a few months at the library, and we've stayed in touch after. Now we're both in different places, doing different things. Your podcast is awesome, so I'm excited to have been invited on it. But I have to share or like warn you that I'm not really well educated when it comes to music, so it's gonna be a learning experience for me today.
Yeah, I mean, I love because the way that I've always approached music is that it's very emotional, right? There's an emotional core to it, and you don't necessarily need to be like trained or experienced or a master of music to really like talk about it, because it's your own personal experience, it's your own personal take off of it. So yeah, you don't need
That's
to
a
have
relief then.
you don't need to have, because we're talking about our own experiences, right? And you don't necessarily need a master's degree in musical theory in order to talk about how something made you feel.
Mhm.
So that's what today is all about. So I'm super excited that you're on. um and yeah, I'm really also excited to see what album you have in store for me today.
Mhm.
So do you want to talk a little bit about the album that you chose for me?
Sure.
Okay.
So I was going back and forth between a few, as I told you,
Hmm.
and I
Hmm.
think, like you were saying earlier, because of the day and like my mood the last couple of days, I made a last minute decision, and I picked an album that um, I first discovered a few years ago.
Hmm.
It was one song on the album that just kind of like changed my world, and now
Ooh,
it's one of my favorite albums. And
all right.
for me, with music, I'm like really into singles. I don't
Hmm.
really get into artists' albums, but
Hmm.
for some reason with this one, it just like spoke to me.
Hmm.
So, okay, without any more introduction, the album is Plastic Soul by Mondo Cozmo. It came out, I think, in 2017. I'm not sure if you've
Mondo.
heard of him or his work.
I
I
have
think he,
not. This is
okay,
this is
good.
a new endeavor for me. Mondo
Woo.
Cosmo. So
Yeah.
what without going into too much detail, what can I
Mhm.
expect with Mondo Cosmo? Like what's the flavor of music? Any genre type? Any um I guess background I should know without giving too much spoilers.
Okay. I feel when I listen to it, it sounds kind of like folky a little bit, but
Okay.
also pop rocky. I don't know. You
Okay.
can tell me if I'm like hitting the right genres when you listen to it. I think
Okay.
that is kind of like the mix that he has going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
only has 10 tracks, but each one like leans into a different emotion. So
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
you have a few that sound like really kind of desperate and also like hopeful at the same time. Others that are just like fun.
Mm-hmm.
What else can I tell you without giving too much away?
Oh, that's
There's a few
fine.
on here where the endings are just like incredible and different and surprising. And that's what I
Ooh.
like about it. It's the
Okay.
surprising tones where he turns.
That
Yeah.
I mean, you're definitely making me very excited about this.
Good. Yeah.
Um, so yeah. Ooh. I'm just looking at
His
his.
voice is just like easy too. It's like just really
Mhm.
pleasant to listen to it. He just sounds so genuine to me.
Yeah, and it looks like he's got two albums right now.
Hmm.
There's The Plastic Soul, which is the 2017 release.
Hmm.
I guess that was his first one.
Yeah.
And it looks like he put out a new one last year.
Yeah. Yeah. Recently, which I haven't gotten a chance to like properly get into, but I will because I really like him.
Oh, fantastic. I'm really excited because yeah, I always love to listen to new stuff, and I am a pretty big fan of like more homegrown folk music, and
Hmm.
anything that has a little bit of like a pick me up poppy drive. I think
Hmm.
is always kind of a happy maker for me. So
Good.
I'm excited for this.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear the album that I've chosen for you?
Yeah. Of course. What is it?
Okay. So this was difficult. So unlike the other two individuals that we had from our Duffer 99 group, I didn't really have any kind of starting point in terms of the genre of music that you like to listen to.
Hmm.
Because like Maria and I have talked about music, and Alicia and I have talked like days and days worth of music, but we never really got into that with
Not
you.
at
So
all.
I was kind of at a loss. I'm like, I don't even know where to start, because I love to give some kind of a branching off point. Like, okay, I know you like this style of music. Where can I go from there to hook you in, or at least give you a grounding foundation for the music that I'm about to present? I don't want to
Hmm.
just throw you in blind, right? Like
Okay.
that. I always feel like that's not fair. But again, I didn't really have any kind of jumping off point. So I decided to go for one of my all-time favorites. And I mean, I've done like 25 episodes of these by now. And like I always say, this is one of my all-time favorites. But the thing that really connects me with this is twofold. One, the musical expression I just love. The band I always get it wrong, but I think it's Karnataka.
Okay.
It's spelled Karnataka. So it's like Karn Ataka.
Mm-hmm.
And the album is their 2010 release of The Gathering Light. And the reason why I love this particular album is I listened to it when it first came out in 2010, and that was the summer between my undergrad and my master's degree. And my best friend and I decided to do a road trip to Nova Scotia. And so I brought 5 or 6 albums with me at the time, and this was one of them. And so when we got to Cape Breton, this is all I was listening to when I was on the island. And it just, whenever I listen to this album, it reminds me of that very serene, very ethereal, very almost Avalon style, like very Celtic, very mystic, very almost like you're in a fairyland, but
Love that.
surrounded by this Celtic mist. So I love Karnataka because they infuse both that very Celtic, very folky presentation, but in a very symphonic, large sound. So that's why I went with The Gathering. It's my favorite album from them, and it's an album that doesn't necessarily get the attention that I feel it really deserves in terms of the progressive rock sphere, but it's one that I will continuously praise, not only from where I was at the time, but also the brilliance in the music that's found within it. So,
I'm really excited. I love folk music.
okay.
So, and I don't know, I've not heard of Karnataka, so I'm
Yeah.
excited to get into it.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
are. I just got their page up here. They are from the United Kingdom, specifically within Wales.
Okay.
Um, and this was after they had disbanded, because originally they started off in 1997 and then disbanded in 2004 and then reformed again in 2005. Um, and then they during that writing period came out and put out The Gathering Light, and unfortunately they have suspended their activity in late 2017, so I don't feel
Mm,
like there's too much uh, prospects of new music, although they did put out one album after this that I
no.
haven't really had a chance to get into yet.
Yeah. You never know, right?
You never know. So anyway, that's the album that I've given to you, and I'm pretty excited to hear your thoughts about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I also kind of compared our 2 running times. It looks like the album that I'm giving you is like twice as long as the album that you're giving me.
Yeah, it's a short
So
album. Yeah.
yeah, it looks like yours is just under 40 minutes, whereas mine is like what is it? Let's see here. The Gathering Light. Yeah, it's an hour and 8 minutes. So
That's okay.
what I'll do is I'll just give your album a second pass. So I'll listen to it twice while you can listen to
Yeah.
mine once. So
Yeah. One thing I didn't mention about Plastic Soul is
mhm.
I was reading a little bit about it this morning too. I think it took the artist a long time, like years and years, to
Oh.
produce. It's interesting because it's a shorter album, but you can
Mhm.
feel all that time in all of the
And
pieces.
all the pieces great. I love an
Yeah.
album that really takes its time in
Mm-hmm.
terms of like the production without going
Mm-hmm.
overboard, because there's examples of albums that were lost in production wasteland and then they finally came out and they were terrible. But I do like attention to detail, that you
Mm-hmm.
can tell like, okay, these guys, they put some thought into it's not just a one and done kind of a deal,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
especially for shorter albums. Like I feel very much like there's a quote that says, what is it? I wish I had more time to write you a shorter note. Kind of in the same veins as like short stories are a lot harder to write than novels because you only have a limited amount of space and you want to get everything out there. So yeah, I like short punchy albums because I feel like sometimes an overblown album it works to its detriment.
Yeah. I agree.
So, yeah. All right, cool. Well, enjoy Karnataka, and I will enjoy Mondo Cosmo. This will be fun.
Good. Okay. So let me just make sure. So are we off Zoom now and listening to the albums, or are we
Yes.
listening? Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So I will close. I will close down this Zoom call. I will listen to Mondo Kondo. You can listen to Karnataka. And then I will send you, well, let me know when you're finished. Then I'll send you a new link and we'll reconvene and
Okay.
start talking about our albums.
Perfect. Okay. Sounds good. See you
Okay.
soon.
I'll see you soon.
All
Bye.
right.
And with that, Leah and myself go into our own music silos to reminisce about one another's music. Myself listening to Mondo Cozmo for the first time, and Leah checking out Karnataka. And we have a really fun discussion about each other's music. And I'm really excited for you to have feel about that. And as always, I want to give a really good shout out to my patrons who really help this show continue and grow. And if you want to be a part of that, head on over to patreon.com/notes reviews. That's patreon.com/notes reviews to help donate. And I have tiers all the way from $1 a month up to $30 a month. And every little bit helps. And I just want to shout out Mark R, who is our newest subscriber to the channel, as well as Travis Lausch. And Travis has actually been on this a couple of times, so I wanted to shout him out. You can actually check his last episode with me, the one previous where he had me listen to Maraz, I think that was, and I had him again. This is my desperate attempt to try to get him into neo prog with IQ. So if that's something that you want to check it out here on YouTube or check it out on the podcast proper, wherever you can listen to your podcasts. And I think that's about it. Enough of me yammering on. Let's get back into the episode proper, find out what Leah thought of Karnataka and what I thought about Mondo Cozmo. Let's dive back in.
I feel like I've been on an adventure.
Oh, that's good. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, tell me a little bit about it. How was your time with Karnataka?
It was so interesting. So this was unlike anything I've listened to before, like closely.
Uh-huh.
I was really surprised,
Mm-hmm.
like midway through songs, also like midway through the album. And I was getting so many different like vibes. Like at first I was thinking like 80s rock,
Mm-hmm.
bit of, I don't know, bit of like early 90s too. Who's that musician? Anya, is I say that right? The Irish musician?
Yeah,
Anya?
Anya.
Anya, yeah, I was like
Yeah.
getting like hints of like um inspiration from her or like
Yeah.
that kind of crossover.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then everything was so like it opened and closed with so much nostalgia, which
Oh,
I love the way this album opened. I could
yeah.
listen to The Calling just like on repeat.
That's amazing. I'm really glad that you connected with it. So,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's amazing. So, yeah, kind of take me through a little bit in terms of like, I guess your initial reaction to it. Like, how did you enjoy it?
I enjoyed it. So when I listened to the first track, I thought
Mm-hmm.
it would be one way, and then when I got into State of Grace, I was like, oh no, the sound is different. And
Mm-hmm.
then again into like Your World and Moment in Time, like they just all felt so different.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time I got to the Gathering Light, the last track on the album,
Yeah.
I realized that I felt like I was listening to like a full story. Like each song had its own story, right? But
Yeah.
when I was thinking about it after, like we kind of start it felt like I kind of felt like I went through a narrative, like I don't know if I read too much into it, but it seemed kind of like a love story narrative where like things were good, then things got bad, then things got like better,
Yeah,
and then
and
it
this
was hopeful at the end. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. One of the things that I love about this band is their ability to weave stories into their music,
Mm-hmm.
because that's something that really shines because each of these stories are kind of small
Mm-hmm.
vignettes, like they're their own little thing, but they all have interconnecting pieces as well. They all
Mm-hmm.
have like a unified theme that's going on
Yeah.
it that I really gravitated to. And in terms of like, I found it very similar to like the Wales um, fairy tales and like how the Welsh will tell stories. And I found that was very pertinent in here because one of my favorite tracks is The Serpent and the Sea,
Mm-hmm.
and how it starts off very bombastic, like it's this dueling of the guitars and the keyboards, but in a very pleasant way. And when the actual song comes through, you're almost looking at, because most of the time these sea shanties and songs about sea monsters and big creatures that live in the ocean are usually told from the point of view of like humans and the destruction of these creatures. Like when we're looking at tales like Moby Dick or um, Beowulf and all those, it's usually of this destructive nature of these creatures. But this one takes more of a spin on that, of like showing the magical qualities of some of these sea monsters, and like kind of bringing it into more of like a human take of that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was interesting how much like the sea came, like the sea was kind of a point I feel like I kept returning back to in a few of the songs, not just in that one, but like a lot of the elements like seemed to feature heavy in the lyrics. Everything felt really like earthy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's almost like I mean, this was something that was very prevalent in like the 60s and 70s, of like worshiping the sun and going back to the earth, kind of that hippie granola kind of approach to things, and not necessarily in like a negative way, right? In a very
No.
holistic, very positive light. And I love the fact that these guys are able to kind of recapture that, especially in a very, I know this was released 10 years ago, but like in a very technical world where like everything is, you know, we've almost removed ourselves from the earth and kind of turned inward in our technology.
And I don't know if this is because of like what I listen to generally, but I was thinking about when this came out, like back in 2010. If it sounds so different than what I knew was like out there, that could just be a reflection though on like what I listened to 10
No,
years ago. But
you're quite right. Like when I think about music of that time, especially within the progressive rock genre, things were very dark. Everything was going heavier. Like some of the really big bands within the prog sphere were going almost like pseudo metal or like straight up metal. And they were talking about, you know, depressive items, you know, our relationships again with technology and how we've removed ourselves from kind of like nature and whatnot. There are very few bands that kept a positive outlook and like sung in a very positive tone. And so these guys are a little bit of an outlier in that sense. And I applaud them for kind of waving that flag of, hey, we can still have some fun within nature. Like we can still connect ourselves with Mother Nature and, you know, the sun and all that. So, yeah.
The whole idea too, I was thinking about like after of like the what like a gathering light is, like what that means. Like I mean that's the name of the album, name of their final track. Just that like bringing together of everything that has happened and into something beautiful and light. And I thought that was really nice.
Yeah, my take of the gathering light is always kind of like a holistic approach of like um a single candle might not necessarily fend off the darkness, but if you gather 100 candles around, you have, you know, been able to fight off. So there's like a unity in terms of numbers. And I think that's kind of what they were going for. And it really only takes one candle to start the flame. So that's always kind of been my idea of like this whole gathering light, is like gathering of light within this darkness.
Yeah. And you feel that like when you're
Mm-hmm.
listening to all like to everything on this album.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the thing that I love about this album is the blending of different styles. Like I always akin to it as like a very symphonic Celtic approach. Like we have this very Celtic, very Welsh style that's rooted in this album, but the expression is very big. Like it's utilizing like a symphony of sound, very similar to like the symphonic rock from the 70s, that I haven't really heard too much of within the past even 3 decades. So I really love that expression.
Yeah, I liked it too. And like definitely like the Celtic vibe comes through strong, but I was getting like a lot of psychedelic sounds too that you would think maybe compete a little bit, but they work together in such an interesting way here.
Yeah, yeah. So was there any song, like I know we've touched a little bit about the first couple of songs with the Calling and State of Grace, as well as the last song of The Gathering Light. I've already talked a little bit about The Serpent in the Sea.
Serpent in the Sea, yeah.
Was there any other track that really stood out to you that you really gravitated towards?
Let me check my notes here that I was scribbling down as I was listening to everything.
Oh, no problem.
Everything, I just felt like everything was so surprising. What did I write? There was one track on here that I thought was like so different. Oh, Your World. Your World felt like so different to me than the other songs like that I was listening into. I think because of that kind of like psychedelic intergalactic like vibe that I was getting from it. I liked too how like half the tracks like seemed really inward focused, and then half the tracks were like speaking to someone or like the
Yeah, I can
the
see
listener.
that.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting, like that kind of like mix. Yeah. Moment in Time too, I thought was like pretty different from the other pieces as well.
Yeah.
And I loved how in Moment in Time, like you get a full intro and a full closing. I feel like a lot of songs like only have one, or they kind of just start and end. But like not just on this album, like just in general.
Right.
But with Moment in Time, like they leave time to like ease you into a song and like ease you out.
Yeah.
And then like they also leave time for like celebrating the melody. I definitely think like melody was the focal point. Like the lyrics, I think, take a little bit of a backseat to the sounds, but not. I mean,
not in a bad way, but
not
I know
what
what you kind of mean. Like the lyrics are there to elevate and enhance the music rather than the other way around.
Yeah, yeah. But I love, like, I think in Moment in Time, like the overlay of voice and music, like not with any words, but just everything like just works together so beautifully. And like again, like they left time for you to like properly enjoy that. It's not just like a 10 or 15-second spot on the 4-minute song, I guess, because the songs are so long.
Well, that's one thing that I love about progressive rock is that they give you that time. They allow you to have that time to really get into the music, and it's not just kind of like okay, here's our song and then it's gone. It's here's the melodies, here's the idea that we're putting forth. Now we'll give you a little bit of time to really enjoy it. You know, it's and that's what I particularly love. It gives us that time to really get into it and really bask in what it is that they're putting down.
Yeah. And like I think because of that room that they gave themselves to, they really allow you to like go on a journey and like an adventure in each song. Like in State of Grace, I think the like the tempo and the beat changed like 3 or 4 times. So you're going through so many different emotions and you're like in different states, not in a jarring sense again, but it's interesting to have that like multiple experiences in a single listening.
Yeah, and that's what I love. And I love when they produce this melody or this tempo and then they switch it around so that it's the same melody but in either a different tempo or a different key to allow you to experience it in a different setting and a different environment. Again, that's one of the things that I love about this style of music. So yeah, it's funny because you started this podcast saying, "Oh, I don't know if I'll be able to talk about it," and I don't feel you've been able to talk so well about all this stuff. Yeah.
I don't know. Your listeners are going to be like, she does not know what she's saying.
No, of course not. You are talking extremely elegantly in terms of like how
Thanks,
this
Michael.
has made you feel. So yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah. It was just like, it was really interesting. I went into it with expectations because of what you and I were talking about before. You were saying how this kind of like reflects your mood today and like in the last few days or weeks.
Yeah.
With things being, I think, a little bit heavier. But I actually, maybe this is because of like where I'm coming into it from. Like I've been feeling a bit later the last few days, but a lot of the, like this like whole journey just felt like hopeful to me.
Oh, good.
Like, yeah, like as one,
Yeah, like when I was listening to this for the first time out in Cape Breton, it was very like transitory. Like it was almost like there was a transition that was happening, and it was happening within this kind of space beyond space, in this almost, as I mentioned, like Avalonian kind of like the Isle of Avalon kind of an idea. And whenever I listen to this album, I'm almost transported back to that space, especially and very easily on days like today, at least up here, way up in the north, where we're having a little bit of this snowstorm in a kind of like a foggy environment. So I feel like this was the perfect backdrop, at least with
Yeah.
my musical listening. And I hope that it at least bled through a little bit on your more sunny and bright day.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and like I love how with how music can bring you to another place, whether it's something that like you've existed in before or somewhere that you're like imagining, somewhere that like you haven't been or have been. Yeah, I love that. So
Oh,
it's
that's great.
awesome that this album does that for you too.
Oh, I'm glad. So, would you return to this album? Would you like do a little bit of a deeper dive, or is this kind of like a one and done? Probably not.
It's not a one and done. No. Yeah,
Okay.
I feel like I was listening to it now and I was thinking like I need to give each song more space because I went through it like one after the other and I feel like I definitely want to listen to one song and like break and then listen to the next song and
Right.
break.
Right. Because
Yeah.
you were saying that you consume music more as like singles rather than full albums.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But just with like these like with the way that these songs are, there's so much I feel like in each one and they're also long. So I feel like you need time to like sit on it after, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
for
I
sure.
will return to it definitely.
Oh, good. Good. You'll have
Yeah,
to let me know how your experiences change as you give it more time to,
I will.
like I always say, like ferment or to, what's the other term? Ferment or to breathe or to like mature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, good. Good.
Yeah.
So, changing gears, going over to Mondo Cosmo for Plastic Soul.
What did you think?
Um, I really enjoyed it.
Good.
I did. I have some thoughts.
Mhm.
And it's interesting. The overall feel of this, like you said that this took a number of years to be made and to kind of come to fruition. And I can feel that. I can feel the time that's spent on a lot of these tracks, and I can feel a lot of the different influences on this as well.
Yeah, it took a
Like,
while for him, I think, to be recognized. Like he was, yeah, yeah.
mhm. Yeah, and so I'm getting a lot of different influences on here. Like this was
Mhm.
released what did we say, 2017, I think it
Yeah,
was.
yeah,
But it does feel like music from a different era.
yeah.
And not necessarily in a bad way, but it did feel to me more like this was an album from 2007 rather than 2017,
Mm,
just based on the flavors that we have on this. Like I felt like his vocal work was a better version of Bob Dylan's vocal works
mhm,
in
mm.
like a more of like a rocky folk kind of a way. Because I am not a fan of Bob Dylan's.
Oh
No,
no.
I cannot stand. I like it boggles my mind. Like there's one thing that I still cannot fathom is how that guy has gotten as famous as he is.
Wow, I
I
didn't know
don't
that.
get it. Yeah, I'm not a big
Mhm,
fan of his. I appreciate him as a poet, but not
mhm,
as a musician. I think he's one
mhm.
of the worst. Like I don't. I honestly don't. I
Whoa,
don't.
that's extreme.
I know it's a hot take. But
Yeah.
I like the fact that this guy is channeling what Bob Dylan was doing with his vocal works and actually
Mhm,
making it pleasant to listen to.
mhm.
So,
Okay, good. Point
yeah,
for Mondo Cosmo.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And the actual music that's found on this, I felt like it was a very good blend of kind of the post grunge style of rock in veins like Radiohead, specifically on the Benz album. Like there's a lot
Mm,
of tracks in terms of the guitar work that felt like that. Like tracks such as Higher, Shine, and specifically Thunder.
mm,
Those ones have this very Radiohead stylings where there's the interplay between the major and minor chord in a single meter of music.
Yeah.
that I felt that Radiohead was doing very, very well on those albums. So there's the marriage between that as well as albums from the kind of proto indie rock. So bands such as like Radiohead and their album of Neon Bible, where it's a larger and grander sound, in more of like this shadowy minor chords. And I was getting flavors of that on tracks like Hold On To Me, Come With Me, um, Chemical Dream, and Automatic,
Mm.
where it felt much more almost like this contrast between the singer-songwriter folky aspect, but with this more higher produced, synthetic, and synthesized expression. And that's where I kind of felt like there was a lot of time and effort put into this, because those are two very different and in some ways opposing expressions, but working very well. So I guess kind of like what you were experiencing with Karnataka,
Yeah.
with those like very different expressions, but instead of it just falling to pieces, it actually is being held together very, very well.
It's funny, we had like the same experience listening to two very different albums, very different styles. Yeah.
Yeah. So there were, because the way that I listen to music is almost in contrast to the singles approach, where I will listen to a full length album as like a singular expression. So what I particularly liked about this album is the flow and how the whole album flows overall. Because there's this point between Thunder, which is what, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like the sixth track. And up to that point, it was very, I felt, homegrown, very singer-songwriter in approach, very personal, very intimate. And then when we come into Automatic, the style changes so abruptly. It almost feels like EDM in that sense. Like it's very synthetic. It's less homegrown grassroots kind of approach.
Yeah.
But I still love the fact that it's very optimistic. It's very go get them and pump up the jam. That then continues into one of my favorite tracks, which is it Acre, I think is how you
I
pronounce it.
love it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really bad with pronouncing these things.
Same, don't worry.
But I love that it's still like this, like it continues that synth-led charge while grounding this in more of like a celebratory nature. It's got this large driving beat, but it's almost like a call to arms in like this celebratory way, that then when we get into Angel, it's this kind of return to form, this breath of fresh air, and it's almost pep talk being more personal in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You hit it with like for me, this album is like a celebration. Every song feels like it.
Yeah.
Plastic Soul is the track that I just like died over when I first heard it. I think it was Shine that brought me here. It was playing on probably the Edge or like Indie 88, and I was interested. So that's what like brought me to him. But when I heard Plastic Soul, it was like, it's just like a gut punch for me kind of song. And like the ending, the way it ends, it just feels like, it feels like my soul. I don't know. Yeah, but like it's celebratory too. But I'm glad you like found that in the later tracks as well.
Yeah, and I also loved how you mentioned right at the beginning of this how the tracks progress and how they change and you don't know which way they're going. And even though these tracks are shorter in length than the Karnataka tracks, they do add that feeling of you being on a journey. It's not just like, this is the big hook, this is the big chord that we want everybody to listen to, and we'll just play it over and over and over again. Even though there are a couple of tracks very similar like that. Although there was a point on the third track of Higher that has this, it's only there for a quick second. There's this guitar work that reminds me of either Coldplay or Owl City that like I hadn't heard in almost a decade.
Yeah.
And like on the one hand, it does feel like it's very dated, but on the other hand, it's almost this instant nostalgia that I really, really love, because I haven't heard of anything from Owl City in like a decade. So
Yeah. Yeah. And Coldplay's changed it, like it sounds so much. Yeah.
they have, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, the last point that I had was the last track of Chemical Dream.
Yeah.
It might be my favorite,
Yeah.
because
I love this one too.
I love how it starts off with almost this post-rock feel, like something that we would have heard from like Explosions in the Sky or Mogwai, or like some other post-rock kind of a ditty. And then it gradually climbs and builds this track, and it feels like you're climbing up a mountain to this final ending piece that I really enjoyed. Like, it was a very satisfying peak, because it wasn't just like a build for a build's sake. You do actually get to somewhere by the end of the track. So
yeah. It seems like with these two albums that you and I have different taste in like sound music, but I think that we are after the same experience, that like wanting to listen to songs that like take you somewhere, take you on an adventure, maybe have like a bit of nostalgia in them. So that's interesting.
Yeah, and this is part of the thing that I love about this podcast, is finding those connections between two very different expressions. Yeah. Really.
And so is this album one and done for you, or are you going to return to some of the songs?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh no.
I know. Well,
Say no.
No, this is the thing, right? Because I have so much music that I listen to on my day-to-day life that like time is really a valuable real estate for me. I don't know if I'd return to this album, but I mean, I shouldn't say it's a one and done. It definitely captured my attention, and I will go back and listen to the other album that Mondo Cozmo has put out, like the one that he put out last year, because there is enough on here that I would kind of come back to. And every year I do create a Happy Tunes playlist. And so for sure, there's going to be a couple of songs from this album on that playlist for 2021. So yeah.
Good. I'm happy to hear that. Good.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that's my take on this. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, I'm still kind of wavering whether or not I'd return to it. I might put it on the shelf and then return to it later on, like just to see how it makes me feel in a different setting. So yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on board and doing this little, podcast for me.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun. I really enjoyed it. I'm not sure how I'm going to get back to like the rest of my day. I feel lost in what I was listening to and what we were talking about. So it's a write-off now. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Oh no.
No, it's good. It's in a good way. I'd rather be thinking about music than, everything else. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you for coming on board. Is there anything that you want to leave the listeners with? Anything that you want to have them be aware of?
I hope that everyone tries Plastic Soul, even though you seem to be a little on the fence with it. And
I will say, I give it the seal of approval. I say that you should listen to it. Yeah.
Good. And also, The Gathering Light was really awesome. So if you guys haven't heard this before, go check out that album too.
Good. Excellent. Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on board, Leah. This was great.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
Hope you have you back in the future.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, definitely.
Wonderful.
All right.
And I hope everybody has a great rest of their day, and just keep sharing music, everybody.